Dean Martin was known for his smooth singing and rat-pack charm on stage, but off-stage he had a much bigger role. The devoted father of 8 children from 3 different marriages. These kids grew up in the glow of Hollywood, but each followed their own path, filled with fame, heartbreak, and surprises. Some stepped into the spotlight, others stepped away, and tragedy struck the Martin family more than once. Curious to find out what became of Dean Martin's 8 children? Let's dive into their stories. Number 8. Craig Martin. Stephen Craig. Martin, born June 29, 1942, was Dean's first child and eldest son. As a boy, Craig largely stayed out of the limelight. His parents split when he was 7, and Dean won sole custody of Craig and his 3 sisters. The 4 youngsters were then lovingly raised by their new stepmom, John, Dean's second wife. Craig grew up in a showbiz household, but initially behind the scenes, and eventually followed in his father's footsteps in the entertainment industry, not as a performer, but as a TV producer. In the late 1960s, he even worked on The Dean Martin Show as a production coordinator, later moving up to associate producer. By the 70s, Craig had production credits on hit shows like the musical variety series Shauna Na. While working in television, Craig found love in a very Hollywood way. He met Carol Costello, the daughter of famous comedian Lou Costello, on the job, and the two eventually married. This meant Dean Martin's son had married Abbott and Costello's daughter, a true old Hollywood family union. But tragedy struck in 1987. Craig's younger brother, Dean Paul, died in a plane crash, and just 8 days later, Craig's wife, Carol, suddenly died of a stroke at age 48. Losing his brother and his wife in the span of a week was a devastating double blow for Craig. After enduring those heartbreaks, Craig stepped away from public life, preferring privacy and a quiet life out of the spotlight. He remains close with his siblings. His sister Dina publicly wished him a happy 80th birthday in 2022, calling him her sweet brother and sharing a cherished old family photo. Now, in his early 80s, Craig Martin's story is one of a man who helped preserve his father's legacy from behind the camera and who weathered unimaginable loss with the support of his family. Number 7. Claudia Martin. Dean's eldest daughter, Claudia Martin, was born March 16, 1944. Like her dad, Claudia caught the entertainment bug early. As a teenager, she made her film debut alongside her father in the comedy Hollywood, or Bust, 1956, and went on to act in movies like For Those Who Think Young, The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini, and Ski Fever. On television, you might have spotted Claudia in popular 60s shows such as My 3 Sons and The Donna Reed Show. She clearly inherited some of her father's talent and love for performing. Claudia's personal life had its own twists and turns. In 1969, she married actor Keel Martin, and together they had a daughter, Jessie. Though that marriage ended in 1971, Claudia found love again. In fact, she married 3 more times over the years. Her subsequent husbands included actor Vincent Lucchese, then Thomas Brown, and finally Jim Roberts. With Jim Roberts, Claudia settled away from Hollywood's glare. The couple moved to Reno, Nevada, and even ran a printing business together. For a woman who grew up amid showbiz glamour, Claudia ultimately seemed to prefer a more normal life in her later years. Sadly, Claudia's life was cut short by illness. In February 2001, at just 56 years old, she passed away from breast cancer. Her death was a heartbreaking loss for the Martin family. She was the first of Dean's 8 children to die. Number 6. Gail Martin. Next came Barbara Gail Martin, born April 11, 1945. Growing up third in the Martin brood, Gail had a childhood most of us can only imagine. Her best friend was Liza Minnelli. She babysat a young Jamie Lee Curtis, and she literally knew Frank Sinatra as Uncle Frank. As Gail later mused when asked what it was like to be Dean Martin's daughter, "Compared to what? I always was, you know? In other words, she didn't know any different. To her, having a famous dad and mingling with Hollywood legends was just normal life. Gail did venture into the family business for a time. Blessed with a lovely voice, she performed as a singer, even opening for her father's Las Vegas shows and touring the country with her own nightclub act. By the late 1960s, however, Gail decided to step away from showbiz to focus on family life. At 23, she married Paul Polina, a 42-year-old attorney, in a backyard wedding at Dean's Beverly Hills home. Together, they had 2 daughters named Capucine, Cappy, and Liza, after her pal Liza Minnelli. Gail's singing career took a back seat as she embraced motherhood. Though her first marriage didn't last forever, Gail and Polina eventually divorced. She found love again later. In 1999, she remarried Mike Downey, a prominent newspaper columnist, in a Las Vegas ceremony. Today, Gail Martin Downey is in her late 70s and reportedly enjoying a quiet life with her husband in Rancho Mirage, California. She might not be on stage anymore, but Gail still cherishes her unique upbringing. And as one of the elder Martin children, she's been there to represent her father's legacy. For instance, she joined her siblings in 2009 to accept Dean Martin's posthumous Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award on his behalf. Number 5. Deanna Martin. The youngest of Dean's children, with first wife Betty, was Deanna Martin, born August 19, 1948. Fun fact, her dad actually missed her birth because he was busy performing on stage with Jerry Lewis that night. The show went on at Slapsy Maxie's nightclub while baby Deanna arrived into the world. Despite that comedic timing, Deanna grew up very close to her famous father. With Uncle Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. around so often, it's no wonder she felt drawn to performing as well. Growing up, I was given tap, ballet, and piano lessons. I guess performing was just in my genes. And to tell you the truth, I think all the Martins are kind of hams, Deanna joked, acknowledging that entertaining people came naturally in the Martin family. Deanna wasted no time pursuing the stage. As a teen in the 1960s, she frequently appeared on The Dean Martin Show, charming audiences alongside her dad. She branched into acting too, landing roles in films such as Young Billy Young, 1969, and Strangers at Sunrise, and later, a 1975 movie Paisano, A Voice in the Night. But Deanna truly made her mark as a singer and stage performer, carrying on the Martin musical legacy. She has recorded multiple albums. Memories Are Made of This, 2006, was her debut, and she's released several more through the 2000s. Often, her music pays tribute to her dad's hits. For Dean Martin's 100th birthday in 2017, Deanna even toured a show called Deanna Sings Dino, where she performed his classic songs for old and new fans. Beyond performing, Deanna became an author and keeper of her father's memory. Her 2004 memoir, Memories Are Made of This Dean Martin Through His Daughter's Eyes, became a New York Times bestseller. In it and in interviews, Deanna lovingly shares the joy Dean brought to the world and to his family. I have to recognize what Dean Martin did for the world, the joy he brought to everyone, she told the Los Angeles Times. In her personal life, Deanna has also found lasting happiness. She married actor and music producer John Griffith in 1990 after a blind date, and the couple remains together over 30 years later. Now, in her mid-70s, Deanna Martin continues to perform and celebrate her father's legacy, ensuring that everyone still loves somebody sometime, especially the great Dean Martin. Number 4. Dean Paul Martin Jr. When Dean Martin married his second wife, Jan, they welcomed a son, Dean Paul Martin Jr., on November 17, 1951. Growing up, he was affectionately nicknamed Dino, or Dino Jr., and quickly developed a reputation as the family's golden boy. And for good reason, it seemed there was nothing Dean Paul couldn't do. The problem with Dean is that he was too good at too many things, a friend once said. As a teenager, Dean Paul was a tennis prodigy who played in college and even ranked among the pros. At the same time, he had inherited musical talent. In the mid-1960s, he formed the rock band Dino, DC, and Billy, with friends Desi Arnaz Jr., son of Lucille Ball, and Desi Arnaz, and Billy Hinshaw. Their group had hit songs and made young Dino a teen idol for a spell. Not stopping there, Dean Paul also tried his hand at acting. He earned a Golden Globe nomination for his role in the 1979 film Players. Whether it was sports, music, or movies, Dino Jr. excelled at it. By the early 1980s, however, Dean Paul discovered his true passion high above it all: flying. He became a pilot with the California Air National Guard in 1981, fulfilling a childhood dream of taking to the skies. His father, Dean, was immensely proud of his namesake service. "I'd be proud even if he didn't become a jet pilot because he's a good boy. He just doesn't know what he wants to be," Dean Sr. quipped admiringly, recognizing his son's adventurous spirit. In his personal life, Dean Paul experienced some Hollywood romance and drama. In 1971, at just 19, he married actress Olivia Hussey, famous for Romeo and Juliet. They had a son, Alexander, but divorced after a few years. Then, in 1982, Dean Paul married Olympic ice skater Dorothy Hamill, another high-profile union that sadly ended in divorce by 1984. Through these ups and downs, Dean Paul remained focused on flying. Tragedy struck on March 21, 1987. While on a routine training mission, Captain Dean Paul Martin's fighter jet went down in the San Bernardino Mountains, California, crashing into a mountainside during bad weather. Dino Jr. was only 35 years old. His sudden death absolutely devastated the Martin family. It's said that Dean Martin was crushed by the loss of his beloved son, and he was never quite the same afterward. In fact, many say the heartbreak of losing Dean Paul marked the beginning of Dean Martin's own decline in health and spirit. The golden boy who could do anything was gone too soon, leaving behind a legacy of talent and a family that still honors him. Number 3. Richie Martin. Dean's second son, with Gene, Richie James Martin, was born on September 20, 1953. Richie grew up the sixth child in this big, boisterous family, surrounded by music and laughter. "I grew up with it," he said of music in his household. Although funny enough, they weren't listening to Dean Martin records at home. Not that we'd ever walk in and hear Dad's songs playing. It was always someone else, Richie joked. Still, music was in his blood, and Richie embraced it from an early age. In the 1970s, he recorded an album called Beached with Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, a close family friend, and later his sister's husband. One of Richie's songs, Stop, Look Around, even became a modest hit. He continued performing through the years, and by the late 90s, he was touring with a group called Richie, Desi, and Billy, alongside Desi Arnaz Jr. and Billy Hinshaw, a heartfelt homage to his late brother's band from decades before. Richie wasn't as constantly in the limelight as some of his siblings, but he carved out his own niche as a singer, songwriter, and author. In 2002, he published a memoir titled That's Amore, A Son Remembers, sharing warm and wild tales of growing up Martin. For example, Richie's 21st birthday party was a star-studded affair, attended by the likes of John Lennon, Ringo Starr, Elizabeth Taylor, David Bowie, and Elton John. Talk about an enviable guest list. Richie's book gave a loving inside look at the Martin family, showing that beneath the glamour was a lot of heart. In his personal life, Richie married Annie Rasmussen, and together they had 3 daughters, Pepper, Montana, and Rio. He clearly adored being a dad. Sadly, the Martin family was hit with yet another loss when, in August 2016, Richie Martin was found dead at his home in Utah at the age of 62. The cause of his death was not made public, but his passing was a shock to his siblings and fans. His sister Deanna wrote a heartfelt tribute calling Richie one of the sweetest souls I have ever known, and saying his kindness, sweetness, and loving nature will be missed more than words can say. It was a touching reminder of how close the Martin siblings remained throughout their lives. Number 2. Gina Martin. Born on December 20th, 1956, is the youngest of Dean and John's 3 children. Compared to some of her showy or siblings, Gina led a relatively private life. As a child, she occasionally popped up on TV. For instance, little Gina appeared on a 1967 Christmas episode of The Dean Martin Show alongside her family. But unlike her brothers and sisters, Gina mostly stayed out of the entertainment spotlight as she grew up. Her one known acting credit as an adult was a tongue-in-cheek TV movie Action Family in 1987. But she never pursued Hollywood fame any big way. Instead, Gina's biggest moment in the public eye came from her personal life, a high-profile romance and marriage. Gina started dating Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys in the late 1970s. Carl was rock royalty, and the two enjoyed a loving relationship for years. Finally, in 1987, after 7 years together, Gina married Carl Wilson. Their wedding that year was a bright spot of joy for the Martin family, which had endured the tragic death of Dean Paul only months earlier. Richie Martin later wrote that Gina and Carl's union was a nice glimmer of sunshine in what had been a gray season for our family. Dean Martin gained a beach boy as a son-in-law, and the couple settled into married life. Gina and Carl remained together for 11 years until heartbreak struck in 1998. Carl Wilson died of cancer at age 51. Gina was widowed in her early 40s. Since losing Carl, she has stayed largely out of the public view, quietly honoring both her husband's musical legacy and her father's. Gina, now in her late 60s, occasionally joins her siblings at family events or tributes. But for the most part, she's someone who had a brush with fame and chose a quieter path. Number 1. Sasha Martin. The final member of Dean Martin's brood is Sasha Martin, born in the early 1950s, exact year not widely known. Sasha isn't Dean's biological child. She was the daughter of Catherine Hahn, who became Dean's third wife in 1973. When Dean married Catherine, he warmly adopted Sasha as his own. She was just a little girl when she joined the Martin family, but from that moment on, she was a Martin through and through. As son Richie later wrote, "I never referred to her as my stepsister or adopted sister. Through 3 marriages and 8 kids, we were always one family, the Martins." Those words really show how much unity and love Dean fostered among his children, regardless of blood relation. Even after Dean and Catherine Hahn divorced in 1976, Dean made sure Sasha was taken care of and remained a part of the family's circle. In her youth, Sasha mostly stayed out of the spotlight that followed her famous dad. But in the late 1990s, she decided to try her hand at acting. Under the name Sasha Martin, she landed a role on the popular soap opera, Guiding Light, playing the character Marina Cooper from 1997 to 1999. Soap opera fans might also spot her in the 1997 comedy film Private Parts, where she had a small role as the daughter of shock jock Howard Stern. These acting gigs were relatively brief, but it was Sasha's way of exploring the entertainment world that her father dominated on her own terms. After that, Sasha stepped away from acting and, like some of her siblings, has lived a more private life.